An Evening at the Movies is a proud member of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Other shows in the network include Mass Debaters, The Sip List, Crushgasm, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crime Rewind, and Literature Reapers. You can find out all about our shows and more at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening. You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world and whatever day of the week it is, because, well, let's be honest, as everybody knows, Kasey is all about pre-recording lately, and by the time this episode releases, it's not going to be the Sunday before the Super Bowl anymore, but I digress. It is everybody's favorite movie-based podcast time. It is time for An Evening at the Movies, and as you all know, what do we do on An Evening at the Movies? Well, we eat the stale popcorn, we drink the watered down soda, and we discuss all the great movies and why we love them. Except for a few times we discuss the bad movies. But this is not going to be one of those times. This is going to be a time we discuss a great movie. But before I get into all of that and tell you what we're going to be discussing today, I have a brand new guest on the show, and I'm very happy to have him here because we have had this plan for a little while now. And it's a movie that I'm excited to talk about, like I said. But I'm excited to get a chance to bring his perspective on this movie to the listeners so that everybody can enjoy what is going to be an epic episode as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Paul to the show. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you so much for having me, Kasey. I'm really excited to be here.
Like I said, I'm excited to have you here. And yeah, I was going to go all out with your name, but I remembered before I hit record or after I hit record that I forgot to ask for correct pronunciation, and I try and not mess with that if I don't ask because some people tend to get offended if you screw up their last name like that.
Oh, I've heard every variation.
I'm not going to go down that road.
Yeah, don't worry. I've heard every single variation you could possibly imagine. And if I was that easily offended, I wouldn't have started a podcast myself.
Well, no, I get that, and you would think even like with my last name that it's very cut and dry and simple because literally, okay, so I will let you wager a guess as to how you think my last name is pronounced, but it is spelled Box.
I don't want to come onto your show and then like insult you by getting your name wrong, but it's spelled Box.
Oh, trust me. You're not. I have heard some of the most outlandish shit. Excuse my French, as for pronunciations for my last name. And the stupid thing is it's not that complicated. It is the most simplest guess that you could ever. It is plain and simple. My long story short, my uncle had me going around town when I was like 2 years old, introducing myself to people saying, "Hi, my name is Cardboard," because my last name is literally pronounced Box.
But see, I was afraid like it was going to be
So
something like French where it was going to be like books. And I'm going to be like, God damn it, he got me.
no. Yeah, I've had people try and pull the whole weird dialect accent thing on, and like, yeah, if it was like that, there'd be like the little slashes and the whatever over the vowels and all that. I'm
Right.
like, no, it just plain and simply Box. Oh, that's kind of. You imagine growing up with that kind of. Yes, I could imagine growing up with that last name because I grew up with that last name, people. So yeah, again, like I don't get offended over stuff like that, but I've had a couple people before that have, and no need to throw them particularly under the bus, but it just if I think about it before or after I hit record, I generally just don't go down that road just because I try and create as friendly and welcoming of an environment as possible. And if we're 5 minutes into the show and I'm already offending you because I hacked up your last name, and the episode's going to be doomed to fail anyway. So, and we don't want that. We want great episodes for our great listeners to listen to each and every week. Wow. I didn't think that was going to end up cutting up 5 minutes of our airtime, but
But it's
oh
a good
well.
5 minutes. It was a good 5 minutes. It sets the tone, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, well, and it's nice to set the tone in a way where it's like, and everybody knows because we have people that are here for the last 3 years plus. The fact that um, as we're recording this, day a 6 days away from recording our 200th episode. As this
Wow.
episode drops, we're 12-ish episodes, so we're at 112 episodes. But um, yeah, it's like there's people that have been here since the beginning, and they know I ramble at the same time, but I do my best to try and create a friendly atmosphere so that even as the listeners who aren't involved directly in our episode go, they still feel like they're here and they're, relaxing with us and just shooting the shit about great movies and why we all love them, which is actually a perfect segue into the fact that we are here today to discuss a really classic movie. You know what? I'm gonna save all the adjectives for the review portion of the show, and I'm just gonna say we're gonna discuss an oldie but a goodie. No, oldie. Oh my god, this movie is literally like a year younger than I am.
Oh boy.
But I go figure. No, almost 2 years because this was December of '78 when it came out.
Mhm.
But 6 months may break my bones, but year math will always hurt me. So we're going to be discussing the superhero. Well, I'll just say this, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure Paul's going to agree with me on this. One of the movies that helped set the standard for the superhero genre as we know it. We're going to be discussing the 1978 Christopher Reeve Chef's Kiss classic Superman. So, rapid fire background information really quick so we can get going. Um, Superman released on, uh, yeah, 15th, 1978. I don't know why that wasn't clicking in my head, but it was directed by Richard Donner, was released by, had a $55 million budget,
Mhm.
and made $300.5 million at the box office in
That's
1978,
wild.
which again, yeah, exactly. And like you guys all know from last week's episode where we discussed Batman 1989, we're going to bring back a little thing that we used to do all the way back in the beginning. Um, our inflation calculator. So that 305 or $300.5 million in 1978 would be the equivalent in 2003 or 2023 of having a $1.5 billion box office.
Wow.
So, yeah. So imagine in today's society the fact that $1.5 billion, that's like Star Wars sequel franchise numbers. That's Harry Potter numbers. That's, so just, comparing it on that aspect alone, you know, Superman in 1978 was doing numbers that, Jenkins and Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi and Deathly Hollows and, most of your Marvel movies are doing nowadays. So it's on that same level as some of those great epic master contemporary masterpieces that we all know and love. So um, with all that said, though, we get to the fun portion of the background information. Let Paul know about before we recorded
Mhm.
that he promised he has not looked up yet. So I'm curious to know what his guess is going to be. But I have sets of numbers. I have the critic score and I have the audience review score for Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
Which one, or so you can guess on one, both, whatever you want to do. But what do you think the Rotten Tomato score for Superman movie would be?
I'm gonna say that the critic score, I'm gonna give it 83. Just feels right. And for the audience score, I'm gonna say 85.
So you were really, 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 really you could not get any closer on the audience score without being 100% right.
Really?
Um, the audience score on 250,000 plus views is 86%.
Oh,
And you literally were off by 1%.
oh,
And you weren't even off by that much on the critic score either.
oh, really?
Um, the, on 77 reviews by the critics, Superman got a 94%.
Oh, wow. It's way higher than I
So
thought it was.
yeah, I mean, this actually poses an interesting question because I know that there has been debate out in the world, and you know what? I think I will add this question to our discussion portion of the show,
Mhm.
and what Paul's thoughts are as well, because no, I'll save it for when we get there. So, no spoiler. Well, no spoiler alerts on the question just yet, but it will be an interesting discussion topic. Um, and then, if obviously, if you guys haven't watched this movie, and if you haven't, and especially if you're a superhero nerd and haven't watched it, shame on you
Mhm.
1,000 times over, because, like, we both are pretty much in agreement on this movie helped launch. This movie walked so that the Avengers and Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and X-Men and Fantastic Four and all Batman, Batman, even the Tim Burton Batman and all of that could walk. I mean, without the success of Superman, if this movie had fallen flat on its face, I don't know if we would have gotten. We probably would have gotten some of these movies, but I don't know if we would have gotten them on the scale that we got them,
Mhm. Agreed.
because I don't know if Hollywood had the guts to dump. You know, we believe in this project so much that we're going to allow you to have $55 million of a budget, and yeah, that even back then, that's a lot of money to entrust in a movie where there hasn't really been a whole lot of success in this genre up to this point.
Mm.
So, so yeah, if you haven't seen the movie yet, and again, like we always say, we don't like the idea of you walking away from our episode and watching the movie. But if you do, put a pin in this episode. Go watch the movie really quick. It's only like 2 hours and 15 minutes long.
Yeah, it's not that long.
But and then when you're done, come back and you can pick up where you left off. That way, we don't spoil anything. But I don't think we're going to be spoiling anything per se, because a lot of this story is, well, I mean, let's just be honest. I'll do a micromanaged plot summary for everybody, and basically, this story is an origin story for Superman as a whole. You
Mhm.
get it opens with him as an infant on Krypton. It moves to his teenage years in Smallville. It moves on to his adult life at the Daily Planet, and ultimately becoming Superman. So you also get the origins of how Lex Luthor comes into play, and Otis and Miss Tessmacher, and all of that. You get a little bit of, depending upon the version of this movie that you see, you
Mhm.
get a little smidge of backstory on how Lois Lane comes into play, and where exactly she comes into play in the, you know, backstory, whether it's when he comes to work at the newspaper, or whether it's sees him on the train running by as a little girl.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter. But ultimately, you get the backstory that sets the stage for what's going to be, you know, this movie. Superman 2, Superman 2, The Donner Cut, Superman 3, and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. So it is probably the easiest way to explain it. Just be it is the origin. It is the ultimate origin story of Superman. Even most of your contemporary stuff, the Henry Cavill movies, and even for the most part, even Superman Returns with Henry Routh or Brandon Routh took aspects of this backstory and incorporated it into their world to create the story that they're trying to tell as well. So, um, all right, so discussion time.
Let's go.
Um, okay, so normally we start out with the obvious and easy question, and I think I'm going to save it for a minute because I found with last week's Batman episode, we actually had an interesting discussion on um, two characters from that movie being Batman and Joker. But so we're gonna do that again episode because I think like we could have a good jump off to our by talking. Who exactly would you classify as your favorite Superman, sir?
So that's a tough one. Like you look at Superman as a medium, and in all honesty, Christopher Reeve encompasses a lot of the best qualities of Superman. He has the look, he has the feel. There are aspects of this movie in particular that have been used over and over and over again. As much as I really do like Henry Cavill, I don't think he had his time to really shine as Superman. They kind of, he didn't get that moment of defining Superman. I want to say though,
Yeah,
I will say Christopher Reeve is for me the definitive Superman. Like even when he changes into Clark Kent, he is the first actor, and I would say one of the only actors to really put in a lot of effort to like, this is Clark Kent, this is Superman. He changes his hairstyle, he changes the way that he's like. There's the scene where he comes back to Lois's apartment as Clark Kent, and he thinks about telling her who he is, and he just kind of like stands upright and takes off his glasses. Like it's super subtle, but it is like a complete character transformation. It's Clark Kent to Superman, and it really does encompass why Christopher Reeve was the perfect person for the job. I will say Henry Cavill's got the body for Superman. Like he looks the part. Like he got huge, but for me, Christopher Reeve he's my Superman. Casey, I lost your audio.
okay. Sometimes my stupid headphones do that. So gladfully the listeners know and accept that. So it's all good. But so I don't know where exactly you lost it, but we'll just repeat that. I could basically parrot everything that you just said about who my favorite is, and I'm okay with that. I will go so far as to say that Henry Cavill is probably my number two
Hmm.
favorite Superman of all time. Um, to me, this feels a lot like my answer for the Batman question from last week. Um, I tend to gravitate towards the classic and what I grew up with.
Hmm.
And for me, while yes, I grew up watching the original Batman TV show and Adam West as a kid, um, to me, Michael Keaton was my Batman that became my Batman as a kid.
Hmm.
For me, as a kid, Christopher Reeve was my Superman who became my Superman. And I don't care how good of a job Brandon Routh did or didn't do, you know, not going to debate that point, but um, hashtag Superman Returns will not be showing up anytime soon on an evening at the movies. And I'm proud to say that. and I will um, but, um, yeah, to me, other people may have gone and done Batman and done, you know, Christian Bale, not necessarily bad, um,
Mm,
depending upon your likes. Ben Affleck may not have been that bad, whatever. To me, it's not for me. They may have encompassed different aspects of the character
mhm.
better, but in my opinion, kind of sort of like you said, though, Christopher Reeve encompasses that whole total package. He is Clark Kent. He is Superman. A lot of this probably has to do with where he went to school and how he was so classically trained
Right.
because he is a graduate of Juilliard. And hashtag to his late best friend who graduated at the same time he did, Robin Williams.
Mhm.
You know, Robin Williams, one of the most funniest actors of all time, bar none. And the fact that they both were at that school at the same time, both incredible friends, both have the amount of talent that they have. It's like you don't think about the little things like you said with him being at Lois's apartment and um there's little psychological aspects of Clark Kent that I think he nailed. Like Clark Kent is not supposed to be this big, puffed up, you know, strong backbone character. He's kind of sort of supposed to be a deflated, nerdy, klutzy, whatever. And he really captured that all in that image. But then, like in that moment when he's getting ready to, I think I'm going to tell Lois what, you know, my dad told me not to tell her. And, he takes off the glasses. And as he's taking the glasses off, you can see, you know, the backbone forms and he puffs up and he gets that aura about it's like, he's not directly in the suit,
Mhm.
but, that little minuscule hook of the glasses coming on and the glasses going off really sets the stage for that transformation into because even like when you have the helicopter accident on top of the Daily Planet building, and he's
Such a
coming
great scene.
out and looks up and sees the helicopter, and you can hear Lois screaming for help.
Mhm.
And you get that moment where he's running across the street at the revolving door, and he rips the shirt open. You see the logo, and the glasses come off, and it's like
It's the moment.
for people my age, you can attribute that. Yeah, it's the moment. It's that if you're in your, late 30s, early 40s, you could probably say that you grew up watching the Incredible Hulk TV series with Bill Bixby.
Mhm.
And if you watch that TV show, you know when shit got real on that show, again, excuse my French, but when his eyes went ping and bugged out, you knew what was about to happen. He was going to go full on, I'm turning green, and you're in deep shit at this point.
And
So,
also, like,
again,
until
it's the
that
same
moment,
thing.
we yeah, so, like, up until that moment, we had
Yeah, go ahead.
only had Clark Kent. Like, Clark Kent was the only person we had seen. We saw him as a teenager, we saw him when he first
Mhm.
gets to the Daily Planet, and he's trying to be, like, bumbling. When he runs out, drops the S, and he spins around, I still remember this as a kid. I didn't know what that guy was that says, "That's a bad outfit" to him. It's a pimp. Like, that's a guy that's like, "Say, Jim, that's a bad outfit." And,
Yep.
like, he literally looks over, he goes, "Excuse me," and just he changed everything about himself. The way that he spoke, the way that he held himself, just saying "excuse me" and just like looking at this guy and then flying up, it was like a different character, a different actor was on the stage.
Yeah, well, and even to that same extent, though, too. I mean, it's like you very easily there could have been a celebrity esque aura about that moment, but at the same time, he didn't allow that to come into play at all. He literally just put a finger up, like you know, excuse me, and then took off.
Mhm.
He was very polite. He was stoic. He was everything that character encompasses. Because to me, Superman is not Bruce Wayne. He's not Wade Wilson. You know, shout out to our other superhero episodes we've done lately. But Deadpool is a sarcastic, egotistical, whatever you want to call, narcissist.
Hmm.
Bruce Wayne, rich, playboy, blah 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 blah. That's not what Superman is at all. Superman is stoic, respectful. You know, there's a reason why most classic still images of Superman is him standing there with his feet apart, shoulder width, hand on his hips, chest puffed out, bam, because like he says in the movie, I'm here, or even, yeah, during the Lois, when he's getting interviewed by Lois, I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. That literally is what he believes, and what he was sent for was to, fight for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hmm.
And even at the same time, Lois makes the smart aleck comment after he says that, oh well, you're going to be fighting every petition in the world, and he doesn't take the bait on that. He just gonna, you know, he lets it go, but still stands up for what he's saying.
Hmm.
So, like, as much truth as there is in what Lois said at that point, there's also a lot of nobility in how he responded to it as
Hmm.
well. And again, like we were saying, Christopher Reeve just gravitated and grabbed every aspect of that and all rolled it all into one, into a great, amazing portrayal of a character and an iconic character. And even if you want to go back to the beginning of the whole superhero genre, it's like Superman and Batman may not get the credit nowadays that they deserve
Hmm.
because of the success of Marvel, but at the end of the day, Superman and Batman were, as far as comic books go, two of the first people to jump out and help get the genre started.
Hmm.
I mean, it
Agree.
wasn't very long after when everybody else got, kicked off, but still, the other side of this question that we just talked about, though, you can't have an amazing good guy without having an equally and sometimes greater bad guy. Um, and this may not be as meaty of a discussion as last week's Joker discussion was,
Hmm.
because I feel like there's a lot more out there as far as Joker goes. But I feel, no, I'm not going to give my opinion. I'm going to ask the question. I'll let you give your opinion, then I'll chime in with mine because I get crucified for my opinion on this one sometimes.
Okay.
But so who in your opinion is the best Lex Luthor?
So this is a challenging one for me. I grew up with the show Smallville, and Smallville they had Lex Luthor in it. He was portrayed by Michael Rosenbaum, and for me, he was my Lex Luthor. And I think it's a testament. Not only did he have the look and he had the physicality to it, and he brought a lot of charm and gravitas, but also he had 6 seasons to build a character. So it may be an unfair advantage to use the TV example. I also surprisingly, and I get so much grief for this one. So this is gonna be interesting. John Cryer played Lex Luthor on Supergirl, and for some reason he was fantastic in it. Like he nailed the role of Lex Luthor. He found the perfect balance of scary and silly. But in all honesty, like growing up, Gene Hackman was Lex Luthor because it's like you said, the Joker has had so many different interpretations and styles and this and that. Gene Hackman got 3 movies to do Lex Luthor, and he's he's
Yeah.
not the best Lex Luthor. I'll say it. Like he's great, and I love him, and he still gets higher billing than Christopher Reeve in the first movie. But like the whole, he's not bald for most of it. Like, and that was because Gene Hackman was like, I don't want to be bald. Like you can do that. So for me, like it's strangely enough, my Lex Luthor is actually the TV version of from Smallville with Michael Rosenbaum.
I'm not gonna lie. You again, literally ripped off my entire answer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Um, I will say this: I think for me, I grew up obviously again with this four movie franchise,
Mhm.
so in a lot of ways, Hackman set the stage, set the table for what Lex Luthor should and could be. Um, Again, I don't 100% think he was the absolute great portrayal of the character by any stretch of the imagination. And again, like you said, the person I'm going to pick as my number one favorite had 6 years to do it consistently on Smallville.
Mhm.
Um, I wish that there hadn't been the behind the scenes stuff that happened that caused him to walk away because at the point that he did, there was only a couple seasons left before he ended up coming back again
Mhm.
to wrap it all up in that final couple episodes. And it's like, really, could you guys not have gotten on the same page to just complete the whole picture? I would have liked to have seen, especially in those absent years, if he had been there. Where, because for me, that was probably the point where the show started to dip a little bit, and I was kind of like, okay, pick it up. Let's get to what we're all waiting for here, and we still ended up having to wade through some stuff that wasn't horrible, but wasn't necessarily the greatest either.
Mhm.
But my definitely, and this is one of the things I love, especially about the early years of Smallville. They were very good about um, paying tribute
Oh yeah.
to the Christopher Reeve franchise. Um, like had portions of those first couple years before Christopher Reeve died, where he was a part of the show and he was there. And even Tom Welling will say he sat down and spent a lot of time talking to him about aspects of that character and how to help create a better performance from him. I think that helped him grow as an actor, and I think it helped him create a solid image of that character going forward. Michael Rosenbaum has said he was very incredibly mindful about everything that Gene Hackman brought to the table
Right.
and making sure that he paid tribute to that as well as making the character his own, but still not completely, throwing what Gene Hackman did in the garbage.
Mhm.
Um, you had, cameo appearance from so many different people. Margot, Annette O'Toole, obviously, Martha Kent
Mhm.
was, throwback to this movie. She played Lana in the 1978 movie. So, not only is she now at this point Superman mom, you can turn the clock back as she was his love interest in 1978 as well. So, yeah, yeah, it would be Rosenbaum. Um, we didn't bring it up while you answered it though at the same time, but for those of you who don't know, John Cryer getting the nod to play Lex Luthor on in the CW Arrowverse
Mhm.
is a huge throwback to Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Right.
Because if you don't remember, John Cryer played Lex Luthor's nephew, and God, it's been so long since I've seen that movie, I don't even remember his name. But the fact
Lenny.
that literally, yeah, Lenny. Um, but that's the fact that he got to go on from playing his nephew, 30 some odd years later, and then get to play Uncle Lex, only not be Uncle Lex, but get to play Lex Luthor at the same time. So definitely a huge feather in his cap for that. And I I actually really like John Cryer as an actor.
Mhm.
There's certain things he does that can be cheesy and sappy, but at the same time, I think he is has a moderate level of talent that needs to be appreciated.
Mhm.
So, um, obviously, really quick before, not necessarily really quick, but before we get to our review portion of the show, though, you can't discuss something of this level without discussing the positive and the negative. So, what was it about this movie that really gravitated to you and pulled you in as a fan when you first saw the movie?
So this was the first superhero movie that I ever saw as a child. So this was like for me, this was watching the comic book that I had in my hands appear in real life. And the tagline of the movie was "You'll believe a man can fly." So I watched this movie for the first time and I was in awe and just I loved it as a kid. It as a kid though, the challenge that I ran into was it does it's not an action movie in a lot of capacity. It can be very slow, it can be a little like tedious, you know, for so like as a kid, I was like, I want to see him catch the helicopter. I want to see him fly after the missiles. But I remember I wore this tape out on this so much that it stopped working at one point, the VHS. And for me though, like I said, Christopher Reeve stepped onto the screen and it was Superman. Like that, like as a kid watching
Mm.
that, I was like, oh, it's him. Like it's really him and watching him fly and do all these things like for a long time it was the pinnacle. And it's funny because a lot of people credit X-Men for restarting the superhero genre, which it did to a huge extent. It's after X-Men everybody wanted to do a comic book movie, but X-Men was so reserved in
Mm.
like doing the fun costumes and all that stuff. Like Superman, they didn't care. They threw him out there in that like in those tights and bright colors and he's smiling and he's got his hair coiffed like they took the comic and made it real, and as a kid, what was cooler than that?
It made it seem like it was an everyday occurrence that, I will attest to the fact that I was that kid growing up, and my mom will probably second this notion, but I ran around the house for a lot of years because of this movie, you know, with a bath towel tied around my neck so that I had a cape as well. And, it this movie helped create that aura in the back of my mind that being a superhero was an attainable real life job that each and every one of us could be and have. So at the point that I first saw this movie, um, 40 plus years ago, I wanted to grow up and I wanted to be Superman
Mhm.
or I wanted to be Batman or, you know, whatever the case may be, even to the extent that, there was a year my brother and I went trick or treating as Batman and Superman. So I appreciate the fact that I think, like you said, though, too, and kind of sort of going further with this, that suit that he wore in '78, it wasn't like, and no offense to all the movies that came in the '90s and all of that, but it's not the rubberized, clearly chiseled to make the person look bigger than what they are. I mean, literally, it's skin, it's fat. So, not trying to get too graphic, but whatever's underneath that suit that Christopher Reeve is wearing is Christopher Reeve. It's
Right.
not, you know, damn, did he freaking hit the gym hard before they started working? Nope. It is what it is, and that's what you're going to get. It's not something blown out of proportion like, you know, b- bad metaphor, but, and no disrespect to any listener who feels like he is their Batman, but um, there definitely was an overly blown up sense of like how physically fit Ben Affleck was when he
Mhm.
played Batman, because I don't remember uncommon Ben Affleck being as big and muscular as Batman in those Batman movies, or the Batman movie, or the, yeah, you know which movies I'm talking, the Justice League movies.
Yep, I'm with you. And it's funny because,
So,
like, Michael Keaton was not a big dude when he played Batman, he was very tiny. And Christopher Reeve, he actually worked out with the guy who played Darth Vader for this movie. Like, he that was his trainer.
which, again, Hollywood was a big world even back then, but not so big though that you look at the fact that Superman was just becoming a thing at that point. Star Wars was just becoming a thing at that point. So
Mhm.
you have two of these movies that are going to be competing against, because movies just didn't come out in theaters for a month or two back then like they did. If you were a successful movie, you were in the theaters for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months. You had a substantially long run back then because VHS hadn't even really blown up to the level that it would eventually blow up to at this
Mhm.
point. So, you know, the success of your movie hinged on how long your movie stayed out in movie theaters, because if you're not in the movie theater, you're not going to be making money. And I don't think there was an awful lot of money coming in from like ABC and NBC and CBS buying the rights to your movie and sharing them, because there's only so many hours in the day for them to be showing stuff like that, and there's only 3 networks at the time, so we didn't have Fox even at this point. So, you can't hinge on having HBO or Showtime or Cinemax or whatever to just overly dump repeated movies on top of you as well. So, your resources in Hollywood were a lot thinner
Mhm.
than what they are now. So, but yeah, for me, the whole reality and how clear and realistic of a vision that Richard Donner gave us with this movie really helped to make this movie seem that bigger. And even at the same time, I go back to, quote unquote, a year and a half before this when Star Wars came out. Thing can be said though with Star Wars easily could have looked like the Star Trek TV show
Right.
on the big screen, but George Lucas, Richard Donner, and everybody attributed to that could have easily set back and taken the easy road, but they were pioneers in furthering the effects window. And that goes to show a lot with the fact that this movie was nominated for a wealth of Academy Awards for special effects. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, Star Wars and Superman, as far as like these genre of movies go, were like my cutting my teeth on these type of movies. So a huge shout out to Donner and George Lucas and everybody for creating this for me, because if they had fallen flat at the end of the day, I don't know what my love of superheroes or science fiction slash action movies would have been.
Mhm. Completely.
So, was there anything about the movie that you didn't particularly care for?
Yeah, like I mentioned, watching it again, there's a lot of downtime. I think we're a little spoiled by superhero action scenes, but I remember as a kid, like there were parts of that movie that I didn't watch. Like I wanted to see Superman, and he does not throw a single punch
Mm.
in this entire movie. At no point. There is a sequence that got cut out of the main cut where he's going into Lex Luthor's base, and they have like a bunch of like machine guns and cold guns and all these things hitting him. They actually cut it from the final actual show. But for me,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it is Superman, but it's not until and then the second movie rolls around where suddenly they're like, all right, we know how to do all these things. Now let's pump up a little action, and he's fighting 3 Kryptonians in the second one. So it was hard as a kid to not want to
Mm.
watch the second one. As an adult, I appreciate the first one so much more. But yeah, now it's kind of like I love it, but as a kid, that was my biggest struggle was the lack of actual action. And also the whole scene where he's flying with her and she's reading the poem, which was apparently supposed to be like a musical number. It still does
Can
not
you
work for me.
can you read my mind?
Yep. Yep. And it was
Yeah,
supposed to be like
that
a
that
whole
was very cheesy, and they don't even really, even as a probably late grade school, early junior high kid watching this movie,
Mhm.
it's all what are you people trying to do here with this? I mean, it feels very poetic, but yet you're not really leading up to it, and you're not really addressing it afterward until you kind of sort of get to that ending moment where they have their almost romantic romantic payoff, but
Hmm.
then Jimmy shows up and blocks it,
Jimmy.
and he takes off, and she kind of sort of puts two and two together, like, wait a minute, why is Clark never? But he, it's a stupid. It's like, yeah, So you probably, I would agree with you. Probably though, my least favorite aspect of the movie would be it can get slow at times,
Hmm.
and you don't necessarily get um, a lot of the action that you would naturally assume from a superhero movie. But with that said, I do have one last question before we get to the reviews.
Yes.
Um, so we kind of sort of addressed it with your answer to the dislike question, but so many fans go back and forth on the whole which one is better because as most of us know and fully understand, normally the original movie is always going to be better than the sequel. There have been
Hmm.
times where the sequel has outdone and surpassed the original Star Wars Godfather Part 2, whatever the case may be. Doesn't always happen very often though. Um, as far as Superman the movie and Superman 2 go, because I know there are two sides of the equation on this debate as well. Um, which of these movies do you feel delivers what you want from a Superman movie more?
It's tough. It's really tough. Like for me, Superman, the first one is definitive. It's the definitive superhero movie. It is a perfect origin story. It catches everything, but I'm not gonna lie, I love Superman 2. And again, it does the only thing from Superman 2 that could have done a little less of was the whole love story with him and but again, it shows that Lois is pretty smart. Like she figures out who he is and because that's always like the running joke that people
Mhm.
can't figure out who Superman is, who Batman is, but they're surrounded by like all these super smart people, supposedly. But for me, like, I think Superman
Yeah.
2 is the superior movie in terms it's got better effects. And of course, I like General Zod as a villain way more than Lex Luthor. I think the smartest thing they did was make Lex Luthor the secondary villain in the second movie because he ran his course in the first movie. I
Mhm.
mean, again, Zod, Terrence Stamp killed it as General Zod. And a lot of like they still use the kneel before Zod line in movies and TV, which is wild. So for me, if you put
There's people that aren't superhero fans that know where that line came from.
oh yeah.
And if you can create a epic line like that, like Neo before Zod, and have somebody who has minimally watched superhero movies or has never watched a superhero movie and knows that that's a line, necessarily who said it, but that it's a line from Superman,
Mhm.
then that just goes to show you you're onto something.
Exactly.
So,
So
uh,
I will say this that
finish what
Superman
you're saying.
2, it's gonna be Superman 2 for me.
Again, I appreciate the fact that you and I are pretty much on the same page with a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
Um, growing up and doing theater in high school, I learned from my drama teacher. There are definitely ways of building a story that, if followed correctly, helps to create a better franchise that continues to just keep getting better and better as you go. The formula that he taught while I was in high school um, is basically have exposition,
Mhm.
which is getting to know the story, getting to know the characters, and all that. And that really is what you get from the 1978 Superman. It's getting to know Clark. It's getting to know Lois. It's getting to know Jimmy and Perry White, and all of that. Y- You come out of that movie fully understanding, like, okay, I am ready to go for what you're going to give me next.
Mhm.
Now, what you get next is your rising action, which is the escalated conflict between him and General Zod and Ursa and Non as they escape the Phantom Zone and come after him. With that, you also have Gene Hackman going to a different place with the Lex Luthor character. He's not the primary villain, like you said. He's secondary, but dare I say, probably more slimy and sneaky
Hmm.
in the second one because there's elements of even towards the end of the movie, he sides against each other. He's like, I'm. We know he's the bad guy, and we know he's working with the other three. But then once Superman has risen to the occasion and defeated them, he's all trying to play the like, hey, I was reverse psychology. I was helping you the whole time, and you know trying to get off the hook with Superman. But Superman ain't buying it. Superman wasn't born yesterday. He knows the score. But um, yeah, it definitely the more exciting aspect of this whole process would be Superman 2 because you get your typical superhero movie. You get the action, you get everything that is exciting about watching a movie,
Hmm.
all and be rolled into one. But then as an adult, I can go back and look at the edition of the first movie and the psychological aspects as well.
Hmm.
So I feel like one has to be there, one walk so that two can run.
Right.
So both are great movies at the same time, though, and I will always, until the day I die, want to watch. Now, 3 and 4, on the other hand, that's a totally different subject for a totally different episode. Um, yeah, I'm not going to fault anybody, but we are rapidly approaching that time of the episode. And if we go down that rabbit hole, we're going to be here for a whole nother hour, people. So, um, with all of that said, as a whole, would you like to take a moment to wrap up your entire thoughts on the movie and then give the listeners a rating 1 through 5 as to what
Absolutely.
you think of this movie?
So for me, this movie is still even 30 plus years later, like or almost 40 years. Wow. This movie when I have kids and they want to watch a superhero movie, this is going to be the first superhero movie they see. It has something for everyone. And again, it holds a very special place in my heart. It was the first superhero movie that I ever saw. It was the first time that they took that character and like did everything justice. And Christopher Reeve, rest in peace.
Mhm.
He was the definitive Superman. He's the only reason that 3 and 4 are even mostly somewhat watchable. But again, that's another conversation. And he was just the epitome of that character. And Gene Hackman does great. For a lot of people, Margot Kidder was their Lois Lane too for a long time. General Zod, like the whole nine.
Yeah.
They created a look of Superman and of Krypton that has like they use the exact same Fortress of Solitude now like 9 times. Superman Returns is an actual sequel to
Mhm.
Superman 2. Like it is all these things. This movie has a defining genre and a defining history that still impacts Superman today. So for me, I will give this
Yeah.
movie a solid 4 out of 5. It is not perfect, but it is damn good.
Again, the fact that we are so in tune with our thoughts on this, it makes it even that much better. There's so much about this movie. This movie set the stage for, in my opinion, and people can disagree with me however much they want, and it is what it is. But I really truly feel in my heart that this movie set the stage for everything to come in the superhero genre
Mhm.
after this. Not just the Superman franchise, but Batman, X Men, Marvel, the newer DC movies, everything. So I do know that this was one of those moments where I remember exactly where I was the day I saw the news that one Brandon Lee was killed while filming The Crow, where I was when I got the news that Kurt Cobain had shot himself.
Mhm.
Not going down that rabbit hole, but there are, for those of you listening and not watching, I have air quotes in the air. Um, I know where I was when I heard that River Phoenix had OD'd and passed away. And I remember where I was when I heard that Christopher Reeve had passed. And all four of those impacted my, I will say, adulthood, because most of those happened, well, River was in 93 and everything else was junior year of school or later. But those all greatly impacted my life as a whole. And Christopher Reeve is still, I can go back and watch old episodes of Smallville, especially the ones that he was in. And
Mhm.
especially those last couple episodes, and then the episode where they reveal that Dr. Swan passed away, because that
Mhm.
episode literally was done to wrap up the fact that Christopher Reeve had just passed away.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if he hadn't passed away, there was still a wealth of story there for him to play into, but they had to wrap it up, obviously, because he had passed. So it still gets me choked up to go back and look at that. Um, so for this movie to have that kind of impact, for this story to have that kind of an impact on me as a whole, still, I'm technically a rather emotional person, so there is all of that. I still, to have something affect me the way that Superman has affected me for 40 some odd years, a lot of freaking years, however you look at it. I'm not doing the math, but it's a great movie. It's definitely 100% a solid 4 out of 5. Um, if we're talking part 4 or part 2, not part 4, really not part 4, but if we're talking part 2, um, that score might change a little bit. But with all of that said, um, normally I wait until we're solidly into the conclusion to do it. But um, if you, Paul, would like to come back at some point down the road and discuss Superman 2 with us, I would love to have you back, because I feel like there's a whole lot more discussion we can get into there. This
Oh, yeah.
was an incredible discussion to begin with, and
Absolutely.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface. Um,
1,000%. You tell me when.
I will even wager a bet. Okay, so definitely we will get that done, but I feel like there's a whole lot we can discuss with Superman 2. I would even be willing to, depending upon our thoughts, we could do 3 and 4 individually, or even group them together as a whole. I don't care, but the invitation is definitely extended. If you would like to become our Superman guru, you are more than welcome, because at the end of the day, Superman is a solid movie character that needs to be respected and appreciated. And if I've got somebody that's willing to come on and discuss him with me, that makes it that much better, because I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't like doing solo episodes and feel like I'm just talking to myself. So, but we cannot end the episode. Obviously, each and every week we have to thank the dozens for being here. You guys are incredible. The amount of and growth that the show has experienced these last few months is amazingly incredible. The fact that our YouTube channel is picking up subscribers left and right, you guys are really helping pick up and the slack and help us grow this into something bigger than what it already has become. So I love you guys all individually. I love you guys all as a whole. You guys are incredible. You are the reason why Amanda and I keep doing this each and every week. And I will say this though, and I'm not shaming anybody by saying this, but um, I do want to give a shout out to Amanda's show, The Sip List, as well. If you guys need something to listen to during the week and want something funny and entertaining and insightful at times, I highly recommend go pick up an episode of The Simplest and check it out. It is well, besides the fact that I'm on it more often than not, but it's funny, it's entertaining, mildly inappropriate, but it's still fun. You got for those of you who have listened, um, 100% check it out. It is fun. Also, check out the rest of the shows in the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Masturbators, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crushgasm, Crime Rewind, Simplest, Literature Reapers, An Evening at the Movies. All of them are great shows, great hosts, all of that. With that said, though, I would like to turn the floor over really quick for Paul to, say his goodbyes and let the listeners know where they can find him if they would like to check him out as well. So, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So, if you guys are looking to hear more of our content, we actually have three different podcasts that we do. We have the Multiverse Fancast. If you're looking for more superhero stuff, that's the place to go. We talk superhero movies, TV, all sorts of stuff, everything in between. We have a show called Cinematic Adventures where we look at some of our favorite movies of all time, very similar in this vein. So, make sure you guys check that out. And we have MF Uncensored, where we do topical interviews and we bring people on all the time to just talk about life and all sorts of wild things. So if you guys want to find all of it, our YouTube channel is the best way to do it. And that is the Misfit Faction. Just type that in on YouTube. You'll find it right there. And also, obviously, check out our podcast and anywhere you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere.
So, as all of you guys know as well, again, not something I've done as well in the past, but I'm really starting to focus on trying to do it as well. All of the information for all of Paul's shows will be posted in posts on our each and every one of our social media accounts. Maybe not all of them, but definitely at least Twitter and in Facebook as well. So if you are interested in checking out all of those shows that Paul just talked about, because they are all incredible in their own sense, um, I will provide you guys with that information. Definitely check them out. Great shows, entertaining, fun. Um, it has been offered for me to come on and collaborate. I haven't scheduled the episode just yet. I will, especially now that we're almost done with getting the movies that you should see once in your lifetime episodes recorded. I'm going to have a wealth of free time on my hands between now and the beginning of June. So I will be more open to guesting on other shows and whatnot and getting out there. So you can definitely, I will keep you guys informed as to when I will be showing up on Paul's show as well. But at the end of the day, if you are checking out Paul's show and loving it and following, you'll know anyway because I'm sure they'll let you know when it's coming up as well.
Hmm.
So, haha. um, but yeah. So, oh god, trying to remember what we've got coming up. What coming up on An Evening at the Movies? We have the rest of movies that you should see once in your lifetime, and I don't have it on my calendar. So we're gonna wing it. We've got a special um, bonus episode with Amanda and Chansey, where we may or may not be making a special announcement. You're going to have to tune in to that episode to find out if we do or not. But the subject matter we will be doing is we are revisiting 1978's John Carpenter classic, Halloween.
Nice.
So check that out. Amanda will be here as well for You Can't Handle the Truth. A Few Good Men. I don't know why. For some reason, it's Sunday and my brain doesn't want to check into the whole process. But I could not remember what the name of that movie was. Yeah, A Few Good Men is coming up. Not shaming, but the last movie of movies that everybody should see once in their lifetime as well will be debuting in a couple weeks, where I will give everybody my thoughts on a certain Margot Robbie movie that came out last July, and whether or not I enjoyed it or not. And to steal a line from Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that right now. No, but in all sincerity, Amanda will be here for that as well, and we will conclude movies that everybody should see once in their lifetime with a look back at last year's biggest Oscar snub, Barbie. So, whether or not you believe it's a snub or not, that topic may come up in that episode. So, tune in and check it out as well. Um, Again, as always, so much appreciation for everybody who is a part of this whole An Evening at the Movies world. The listeners each and every week, like I've said, I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. You guys are the reason why I keep doing this episode every week, sometimes multiple times a week for the better part of over 3 years now. Um, you guys are awesome. Every person that has ever been on An Evening at the Movies, I'm not going down that list. That's an awful lot of people. But if you've been on An Evening at the Movies, I appreciate love you with all my heart. Um, Again, thank you, Paul, for being here. This was a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying getting out there and getting some new voices for the show that haven't. Nothing against everybody that's been here before, but I feel like new voices and new people to look at are giving the listeners a little bit more excitement to look forward to each and every week. So, um, lots of respect and appreciation for coming on. This was totally fun.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
And and you are more than welcome. And you are also welcome, not just Superman, but if something else pops in your head and you would like to come back and discuss it on the show, I have zero problem with having you back anytime you want to come back. Definitely would like to get you back though at one point when Amanda is not preparing to go to the Caribbean for a week, because she is a phenomenal co-host and she is right, wrong, or indifferent. She and I will butt heads from time to time. She is my best friend. She is my sister from another mister. Um, did not expect to meet her through podcasting and become as good of friends as we are, but um, there is nobody else in the world. No offense to Harvey and Dre and Kendra and Shanna and Cam from the network, but there literally is nobody else I would want to be doing an evening at the movies with. She is awesome. So definitely check out the sip list, and we hope she has fun. We hope she gets her butt back here so that we can do this Halloween episode, and we've got some other epic stuff planned as well. So again, thank you everybody, and we hope you guys all come back for An Evening at the Movies. Have a good week, guys. We will see you next week.